Let's stick with the U.S.-China trade war, talk more about that story. Joining us from Boston to discuss, Dr. Christopher Smart. He is head of the Barings Investment Institute. Dr. Smart, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
So do you buy the latest reports of positive progress? Some interesting back and forth this morning, as our colleague just told us, that editor on Twitter of that China newspaper tweeting out this morning that he doesn't believe that there were actually calls from China to the Trump administration saying we want to come back to the negotiating table.
I think it's hard to tell, of course, because the news over the weekend has been head-spinning in so many ways. I think in many ways, though, it doesn't really matter whether there was a call or an email or an agreement to talk again, because we still don't know what the shape of a deal will look like. We know what hasn't been acceptable to both sides, and I think there is increasing entrenchment both in the U.S. side and on the Chinese side that makes a deal that much more difficult right now. So I'm not sure we're any closer to an agreement, but the markets, as you see, are looking for any kind of direction at all. And so they've been going up and down over the last week or so, really based on whatever sentiment or latest signal comes from the White House.
Dr. Smart, it's Julia LaRoche here. I want to talk about the probability of a recession. This is something that we've been talking about the last several weeks. Where do you see that going? Do you see us heading toward one? And how could trade play into that?
We're clearly heading towards a recession. The question is, how soon will it come? I think the signs have been getting, there have been more and more signs on the horizon that the recession is getting nearer as growth slows down both in the United States and Europe. And of course, China is slowing down as well. I think the trade issue plays into it, not so much in terms of the near-term tariffs. Those obviously have a very important impact on the companies and the industries that are affected. Really, it's the broader uncertainty. How are companies meant to plan their supply chains? How are they meant to plan what markets they're going to get into if they're not really sure what the long-term outlook for tariffs is? And I should just mention this notion that the president raised over the last few days of invoking the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, which he has also backed away from. Really, it's almost one of those like when you swerve away from your first car accident, you can't unsee the imminent disaster. The chances, I think, are still low that will happen, but the notion that we might apply sanctions making it illegal to do business with Chinese entities in the context of this broader trade war, I think takes us to a new level of risk that just wasn't there last week.
Hi, Dr. Smart. Brian Chung here. So last week we heard the Federal Reserve say that they've been flagging not just China, but the broader global picture here. So we talk a lot about the U.S.-China trade relationship, but how does it kind of factor into the fact that China is the second largest economy in the world and that they have ties to other countries that some people are worried about slipping into a recession like Germany? How does the kind of intertwinedness of not just U.S. and China, but China and the rest of the world kind of factor into the global picture right now?
Well, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind because we do spend so much time looking at the relationship between Beijing and Washington that we tend to forget that there are a lot of other countries out there doing business with one another. Germany has been slowing down dramatically because of a lot of things going on within Europe, but also a slowdown in China has not helped German exports. I think ultimately, though, one of the things that gives me some sense that the global recession is not imminent is that the Chinese government has a lot of tools at hand to reverse to counteract these headwinds, both in terms of monetary policy and fiscal policy. They can boost demand within China to some extent, which should counteract some of these slowing forces and some of the impact from the trade war as well.
All right, Dr. Smart, thanks for coming on, and we'll have you back on soon to talk more.
My pleasure. Thank you.